Welcome to the People Connect podcast. Your network is your net worth. Are you ready to take your life to the next level? Be prepared to leap out of your comfort zone and connect with the who's who of what you want to do. Stop, drop, and roll as we start, market, and grow the CEO of you and your host, Nichelle Womack. She will help you engage, reinvent, motivate, and reactivate your plans for success.
Welcome, everyone. You are listening to the People Connect podcast with your host, Nichelle Womack. Thanks for taking time out of your day to be a special part of our day. We greatly appreciate your listens, your downloads, and your shares. So excited for right now we're beginning the process of winding down for 2016. And if you are in preparation for a successful 2017, I think you're going to really appreciate the information, that I have to share with you today. It literally is astounding. And when we look at our financial situation as a country, as America, how much debt we are in. And just to share some stats with you regarding that debt, just looking at the website of Motley Fool, they state that the average American household has a debt of more than $130,000, and the average American household has a debt of more than $90,000, and that is those that even live debt-free. And when we look at the breakdown of debt, we're talking about credit cards, mortgages, auto loans, student loans, just debt combined over $90,000. So my question to you, all of us have some form of debt. Even if you live debt-free, you still have to pay some type of debt. What are you doing to help put yourself, your family in a financial situation where you can live stress-free? Because we already know that debt causes stress. My guest here today, hopefully she's going to share with you something that's going to trigger your mindset, that's going to help you explore the options that are available for you, because you too can become debt-free. No matter where you were, where you are right now, there is an opportunity for you to clear your finances and have some breathing room. And try to get out of that situation. So today I would like to welcome you, my guest. Her name is Bola Sokunbi, and she is a certified financial education instructor, which means she knows what she's talking about. And she has a website, which I totally encourage you to go visit, by the name of clevergirlfinance.com. There's such a wealth of information on there. She helps you accomplish your money goals and get on a path to creating the wealth that you and your family so deserve, so you can start living life on your own terms. Help me welcome Miss Bola. Hello, how are you today?
Hi, Nichelle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, sharing all of your knowledge. We look forward to hearing the tips and all of that you can share with us. Can you please enlighten us to let us know how your journey began as a certified financial education instructor?
Sure, I'd love to. So I have a platform called Clever Girl Finance, which you just mentioned. And basically what I do there is empower women to take charge of their finances. And not just women, because I have a lot of male readers as well. So it's really empowering everyone to take charge of their personal finances and build wealth and build real wealth. And also consider using small business to build real wealth. And I really got on this path to becoming a certified financial educator and just, being super passionate about personal finances from the way I was raised. My parents would always tell me, penny wise, pound foolish. My dad would always tell me never to be a liability on a man. And as I got older, went to college and started experiencing real life for myself, earning my own money, I wanted to be able to see what I could accomplish financially and also be able to teach people what I had learned about money, my successes, my failures, and just motivate them and empower them to be wealthy, because, the people who are wealthy in the world, they're regular human beings like, you and I. And so if they can do it, why not us? And that's where my passion and motivation comes from. And that's, how I really started on this journey to wanting to become a financial educator.
Awesome. Sounds like a wonderful journey. And you were blessed with parents to give you wise advice. I, too, came from a background where my parents were constantly telling me you need to find your own way. You don't need to be dependent on someone else to make certain that your finances are in order. And in fact, they got me on a track very early, starting talking in high school. And I certainly realized that a lot of people are not as fortunate to have had those experiences. But I must tell you, Bola, through my transition of becoming an adult, graduating from undergraduate, I listened to my parents all that time. And then unfortunately, when I graduated, I took a turn for the worse, and I know a lot of Americans that were in that same position where they had to restructure themselves, and, life just took a hold of them, and debt came upon us because we had to start paying our own bills. So with that being said, can you kind of share some strategies that you utilize outside of what your parents taught you to put things into action so that you can go on the path for debt-free?
Yes, absolutely. So I will say that, despite the fact that my parents gave me all this good advice, I still went off and made my own money mistakes. I still went off and got the credit card I had no business getting. I didn't understand the interest rates. So I think, it's something that whether you've been taught as a child or whether you learn it in adulthood, good money management is something that you learn, and it's something that you have to want to learn. So when it comes to paying off debt, the first thing you have to do is decide that you want to do this, that you want to get rid of it. Because if you don't create the mindset to wanting to get rid of your debt, you're not going to do it. So I'll give an example, and I'll use girl A and girl B. So they both owe $10,000. And girl A can only afford to pay $100. They actually both can only afford to pay $100 towards their debt every month. So girl A is like, you know what, I only have $100, but I'm going to pay off to this debt. I'm going to make sure I put that entire $100. So by the end of 1 year, she's paid off $1,200, for example. Girl B is like, oh, I only have $100. This is not going to make any difference. What's the point? So she decides to only put $10 towards her debt, and then the other $90, she puts it, to go shopping, to make herself feel better because she's having a bad day, looking at her credit card statement. And at the end of the year, she's only paid $120. And so that's the difference in mindset. They both had the same amount of money, but one girl paid off more because she was determined to do that. And so the first thing you have to do is really sit down and ask yourself, how bad do you want to be debt-free? How bad do you want to get rid of this debt? And once you mentally commit to it, you're more likely to succeed doing it. The next thing you want to do is create a plan, and it starts with understanding where you currently stand right now with your finances. And it's like your car navigation. If you're trying to get somewhere, you have to tell your navigation system where you are so it can map out the directions. So it's all about laying it down. How much do you own? How much do you owe? To whom? And what are the interest rates? And once you have that laid down, then it's about creating a strategy of attack. So it's either you decide to attack the debt that has the highest interest rates first, or attack the debt with the smallest balance first. Whichever one you choose, the goal is to pay more than the minimum every single month and get rid of that debt as quickly as possible. So you want to think about reducing your expenses and putting any extra money you have towards that debt. You can even take it a step further by finding a second job and attacking your debt. So you really want to make getting rid of that debt a priority, specifically when it comes to credit card debt, because they usually have the highest interest rates. That should be your first priority in terms of which debts you knock off first. So that's basically what I recommend, deciding you want to do it, seeing where you currently stand, and creating a plan and executing that plan.
Awesome. The bottom line, execution, and then that decision. You have to make the decision, yes. As you stressed so eloquently, the mindset. As a small business coach myself and a life strategist, what I teach people is exactly what you stated. Everything begins in the mind. And if you are set forth and if you are strategically planning the objectives and goals that you have out for your life, becoming debt-free should be one of them. You also stress the significance of obtaining a side job or a side hustle, as we like to call them in the business world. That can dramatically impact the way you think, the way you do things, and it may be uncomfortable, which a lot of us don't like to be in an uncomfortable situation starting off. But then you find, as you mentioned, you begin to knock down the debt as you see it. You also stress, Bola, about the interest rates. Now, I really would like to get some clarity on that, because I do know, and I'm sure you know as well, in this credit-driven world that we live in, if you don't have some credit, it kind of, I'm speaking from a real estate end too, because I am a real estate broker as well as an insurance broker. And if you don't have that score, that credit score, it really can take away, unless you have the cash to pay for it, which most people don't. It can take away from your financial power. So what suggestions would you give to someone who is not necessarily in debt, but someone who would like to acquire resources to help get them that credit score or get that credit rating that they so desire without getting into debt?
Sure, absolutely. And I'd like to first just take a step back to really define, what the credit score is and what your credit history is. So credit is really, your credit score and your credit history are really means for lenders to give you debt. It's how you purchase debt, basically. That's what credit really is. It's debt. And so your credit score is basically a grade that lenders use, and your credit history are grading or ratings they use to determine if you are a low liability person and if you have been responsible in paying your bills. So that being said, when you think about using credit to maintain your score and build your history, you want to make sure that you're using it responsibly and you're leveraging credit the right way. So like you mentioned, Michelle, one of the goals people have is to use their credit to purchase a home, which is great, because a home is an asset, right? And so when you think about creating credit, you want to think about, how do I do it the right way? So you can build credit by paying, by getting a contract cell phone and paying that frequently and on time, by using your utility bills. If you use a credit card, by paying it off in full every month. So let's say you have $100 budgeted to buy groceries. You use your credit card to pay for those groceries, and you pay it off at the end of the month. The point where people start getting into trouble with credit is when they start thinking about it as free money. And the money on your credit cards is not free money. It's money that you're going to have to pay back. But, unfortunately, sometimes it gets sold as, the experience and the lifestyle, and nobody really stops to think about the repercussions afterwards. And so, when you go into the mall and you open up a store card to buy a bunch of clothes that you don't need or you won't wear, that's not using credit responsibly. And so you really want to pause and think about, okay, what is the purpose of me using a credit card? What is the intent? It is to maintain my credit. It's not to maintain my lifestyle. And so your goal should be paying off your credit card balance in full, but also creating your own cash savings buffer, so that in the event that something happens, because a lot of times people will say, okay, I need the credit card to pay for an emergency. So you create your own emergency buffer, and if that means putting aside $50 a paycheck, $100 a paycheck, whatever you can afford. So over time, you've built up this emergency fund, this cash cushion. That way, when an emergency happens, you're not jumping to your credit card. You're going to your emergency fund, and you're leveraging your credit card for the things that will help you build your credit, and you're paying those bills off every single month.
Awesome. So basically, Bola, you're speaking of a debt management system.
Exactly.
Okay. We need to be able to manage the debt that we acquire and make certain that we don't get in more debt than we actually can afford. I think, one thing that often worries me when I'm working with people purchasing a home, back in the day, the bank would tell them they can get this amount of home when their income really didn't suffice for that. So I think, in what you're sharing, what people need to be really mindful of is, be honest about what you can and cannot afford. Would you agree?
Exactly. And I just wanted to add something. When it comes to buying a home, right, always remember the bank is trying to sell you a loan. They're trying to sell you debt, and they're going to make money on this debt because they're going to be paying back interest. So obviously when you go in there and you give them your income and all that stuff, they're going to give you the maximum amount of money that you qualify for. Does that mean that you need it? No. So you need to sit down before you step into a bank. Once you have your pre-approval letter, once you have your, your down payment, whatever you have set up to buy this house, and really sit down and go over your budget and determine how much house can I really afford from a monthly payment perspective. If I have $1,000 mortgage, does that fall in line with everything else I have to pay for? And so I always, recommend that your housing costs should not be more than 30% of your overall income. And it certainly should never be more than 50%. Otherwise, then you're just house poor. You're paying all your money to your mortgage, and you can't really do anything else. You can't pay off debt. You can't save. So you kind of get in trouble there. The other thing to think about is that when they qualify you for a loan, let's say they tell you you're qualified for $200,000, that qualification is based on your pre-tax income. But you're going to be paying that mortgage with post-tax income. So that's something you also want to keep in mind. Just because the bank says you qualify for $200,000, that's based on the income you earn before you pay taxes. That's how they do it. And so you really want to make sure you fully understand, how much you can afford from a monthly payment perspective, and you understand the terms that the bank is presenting to you in terms of how much you qualify for.
Exactly. You echoed my words that I teach my clients on a regular basis. Don't become house rich and poor, because then you can't really enjoy life and you become a slave to the bank and to the creditors. And all of that. One thing, too, that I do hear often, and I know myself, sometimes it's kind of difficult to, save money, especially when you're self-employed and when you're just trying to make ends meet. It can be very, very difficult to find a way to save money. Looking at your website, you saved over $100,000 in 3.5 years. Can you please share with the listeners how you did that and some strategies that they can do? If not that much, at least they can, head towards that path of saving as well.
Absolutely. So, I always stress this: every penny counts. A lot of times people will tell me, clients of mine will say to me, well, Bola, I can't save, I can't afford to save, but they somehow manage to spend $15 in lunch, and they can spend $30 to get their nails done, and they kind of have all these little expenses. I can buy a $5 nail polish, but you can't afford to save. It's really thinking about it and putting that stuff in perspective. Is it that you can't afford to save, or you're not planning out your finances well enough to save? So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. The $100,000 I saved, I did that right out of college. So I graduated college, and I got a job that was paying me $54,000 a year. After taxes, it was about $40K. I had a mortgage, I had a car note, and I had actually saved $15,000 towards my mortgage. And so when I started saving my $100K, my down payment was not included. And basically what I did was I established the mindset, and I told myself, okay, I'm making this money. I can manage my expenses. I want to see how much I can possibly save. I want to challenge myself, because the people who I see saving money, I was listening to a lot of, TV testimonials, I guess, from the money shows. I read a lot of blogs. And these people that were saving money were people just like me. They were not people that were handed wealth. They did not inherit it. So why can't I do it? So that was the first thing I said. I said, I'm going to challenge myself. And then I did that. I kept my expenses as low as I possibly could. I made sure that I tried to save at least 40% of every paycheck I got. I saved every bonus I got, but I still tried to live my life. So I wasn't going out every night, but I still managed to meet up with my friends. The other thing that I did was I contributed to retirement, which was really important. And even though at the time I didn't understand what it meant to max out, I did not max out, I still contributed about 15% of my income. And then I started a side hustle, which was a wedding photography business, and that was another way I used to add to my savings. So by the end of the 3.5 years, I had about $50,000 in cash saved. I had, from my job, I had about $40,000 in my 401k, and I had saved $10,000 from the business I started towards the end of that 3.5 years. And, at the beginning, I had the little question mark of doubt, like, I'm not going to be able to save anything. Maybe I'll be able to save $10,000. When I saw myself making progress over time, I was like, oh, my God, wow, I can do this. I can do this. And so that's basically, it was self-motivating. It was surrounding myself with the right influences. I read a lot of blogs. I talked about money all the time with my friends, about investing, about saving strategies, about managing my expenses. I wasn't afraid to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't make that dinner date tonight, And so it was just making conscious efforts. And, of course, I had slip-ups, I had fallbacks where I would go out and buy something expensive that I didn't need. And so it does happen, but you have to readjust and get back on the path of that plan that you created for yourself.
Yes. I totally agree. Now, you turned a hobby or a passion, and you learn to profit from it. And I teach my clients that, a lot of us have hidden treasures that we just keep hidden, and we're perhaps maybe giving them away for free. As you mentioned, your friends would come to you and ask for advice, and you would share it with them. Those are things that you personally can create income from. And as a life transition strategist, one who teaches people how to do that, I share that with them. Look at what you do for a hobby, because hobbies can become profitable. As you just mentioned, you must have loved photography to turn it into a business, or you saw an income strategy where you can build upon that. And so, if you even do hair on the side, if you find yourself good at makeup or cooking or something like that, those are different things that you can start putting a dollar amount on and charging people for, such as Bola did with her photography business. So Bola, as a money coach, I'm kind of curious, when you have clients that come to you, what are some of the struggles that you see that they find difficulty getting through?
The biggest struggles I see are mindset. They don't believe they can do it. They think they earn too little money, or they don't think that, they feel like, oh, I can't do this. But when we start to peel off the layers, it really boils down to the mindset, impulsive behavior, not wanting to look at the situation because they're discouraged by it, they're stressed by it, they're ashamed of it. And so once you can peel back those layers, number one, deciding that you want to do this, mindset is so critical here. Number two, stop being ashamed of your situation. There's no shame. Everybody has made money mistakes. Even the wealthiest people in the world, everybody has had a life circumstance, that has caused something to happen and caused a money situation, and that's okay. But it's about what do you do when you get past the situation or while you're in the situation. What are the lessons you've learned, and how are you going to move forward? So it's really the mindset and getting past the shame and the embarrassment and the fear of your money. And one of the things I also tell my clients is that, listen, money is a tool. Let's take a second and try to detach the emotion from money, because people attach a lot of emotion from money because of status, because of, what money can buy for you, and, money makes one person looks successful versus one person may not look successful because they don't have that much money. I'm like, that's not what it's about. Think about it as a tool, like a knife in your kitchen. You can use that knife to cut up your food nice and neat, or you can use that knife to cut off your hand. Either which way, the knife is just a tool, right? So you want to look at your money that way. You want to be objective about it. What is your intent? Where do you need money to get to? And then the other big issue, I know you asked me for one.
That's okay, go ahead.
The other big issue I find that people have is they may make okay money, they may make great money, or they may be on the path to making, doing well. But a lot of times people they've never really taken the time to understand what are their core values. What are the things that matter to you the most? So let's say you want to travel the world, you want to have financial security, you want to take care of your kids, you want to build a school. Today, the way you live your life today, are you using your money towards those things? And what I find is that people that are struggling with their finances or are not in the situation they like with their finances, they're not applying their money to the things they value the most. And so they get upset or depressed or sad or stressed out because they can't accomplish their dreams, but they're not spending their money on their dreams because they think that, oh, what difference is $20 going to make? What difference is $10 going to make? And so it comes back again to every penny counts, and you have to apply the money you make to the things you truly want. If you want to travel to Dubai, for instance, and it's like a dream destination, have you figured out what the cost of that dream is going to be? If it's $5,000, then how much do you need to put aside every month to be able to afford that $5,000 trip for you and your family to go to Dubai? Have you priced out the cost of your dreams? And so again, it's detaching the emotion, right? You want to buy a house. What's the cost of that dream? You want to build a school. What's the cost of that dream? And how long is it going to take you to get to that place? So again, it's all about being objective. And I know I answered way more than you asked for.
No, you gave very good information. In fact, I really love that, Bola. How much does your dream cost? I really love that. And that is something that we really need to start looking at, because each and every one of us has a dream, whether it's to be debt free and just enjoy the life of being debt free, or if it's to travel to that destination. Each and every one of us has a dream. And I think one thing, too, to point out with that, Bola, is that, we are so stigmatized with what society considers to be wealthy and attachments, as you mentioned, to wealth. And, even when we go back from a Christian basis, we look at the words in the Bible, and people always say, well, money is evil. And one thing that I always share with people personally is that it's not money is evil, it's how you use it, and then the love of it. We all need money to live a life. We all need money to take care of our responsibilities. Even the church, and I hate to go in that perspective, but even it needs money to be functional. So when we release the stigmas about money and how it pretty much captivates us and puts us in a limitation, and as you stress, utilizing it as a tool to help us get from one point to the next, I think we can really be relieved from the stress and really start focusing on our goals and objectives. What do you say about that?
Exactly. I agree with you 100%. And, you have to define what financial success means to you. When you get to that point where you're financially successful and you are happy, because the happiness is the key there, right? Because if you're going to go by what society defines as what your success should be, then if you don't get there, you will never be happy. And the whole point of living a good life is not just to have money. It's also to be happy and to enjoy your life. And so you find there are people who are they're okay with not having any debt, being able to pay their bills every month and go out to dinner. And to them, that's their financial success. And there are people, they need to be able to travel first class. They need to be able to shop at Neiman Marcus, and that's their own definition of financial success, and that's what makes them happy. But don't let those people define what should be your own success. You define what you want and what's going to make you happy, and you work towards that. And you'll find that when you get there, you are happier because you're doing what you want with your money, and you're living your life, and money is aiding you to enjoy that life that you want. Again, it's a tool.
Right. And there's no need to keep up with the Joneses,
the Joneses are broke.
Exactly. On the Most of them are broke, living from paycheck to paycheck, and they're trying to keep up with the other Joneses so that they don't get slapped or looked at as being a society disaster. So, yes, I totally agree with that. So, Bola, as we come to a close here, are there any specifics that you can give the listeners right now that they can utilize today, that they can go out and start helping create financial security and to become debt-free?
Yes, I have a bunch of resources on my website. I have my money worksheets that they can check out to help them lay out their finances, where they currently stand, create their budget. I have my e-course. It's called the Clever Girl Money Mindset and the Clever Girl Money Plan, which helps them define their mindset and, establish that mindset, and also create a solid plan to get rid of their debt and pay wealth. And then I have my blog, my website, that has a ton of content on, different financial topics that they can subscribe to and get my newsletter every week. And then finally, I do one-on-one coaching for people who really feel like they need some hand-holding and some in-person or personal guidance to getting their finances in order. So all that information is on my website at clevergirlfinance.com.
It is an absolutely awesome website. I must commend you. I love your branding.
Thank you.
As a business strategist, I love to see people how they brand their characteristics and what they do. And you have an awesome platform there. And I'm so proud of you because, one thing that we really need to recognize that, you can live the life you deserve. It doesn't have to be, as Bola just mentioned, in someone else's eyesight. Whatever makes you happy, as long as it's in a comforting position and you're not robbing Peter to try to attempt to pay Paul, because that's what we always do. We never can pay Paul off, okay? never can.
Cycle.
Yes, we're just, borrowing or robbing, Peter, and then Paul ends up getting slighted or whatnot. So we need to recognize what our struggles are. I think that's so key. And just to cap, the things that you mentioned, the number one thing that I just really want to stress, as you stress so much, Bola, is mindset. Everything in life starts in the mind, and how it matriculates from there depends upon you. And then the next thing she spoke about is outlook. When we're looking at an outlook of where we want to be in our finances, in our life, in our business, there's always a next step, a next platform that you can go to if your mind is right. The next thing she talked about, opportunities. There's opportunities all around us. What you need to do is look at what you are passionate about and learn how to profit from it, and that can help you reduce your debt. Bola also talked about the decision, execution. Execution is everything. And if you don't execute, then all of this talk that we just shared with you means nothing. What do you think about that, Bola?
Absolutely. You got it all right.
Awesome. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure of speaking with you. I do know you have some social media sites. People connect with you where?
On Instagram at Clever Girl Finance, on Facebook at Clever Girl Finance, and on Twitter at Clever Girl CGF.
See, her branding is consistent.
I'm trying.
Yeah, she's consistent across all platforms. And I must mention, too, she's cute as well. So, that always adds to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, again, thank you so much. You have been listening to the People Connect podcast. I am your host, Nichelle Womack, and my guest, Ms. Bola. We greatly appreciate your time. And this broadcast today has been brought to you by TV. If you are interested in saving money, what we're talking about today, slashing that cable bill in half, that satellite bill in half, you can go to bit.ly/GoTurvey, and you can learn how you can save money on your entertainment. Now, that's one thing that I know people are going to do constantly. They're going to look at TV. They're going to find a way to look at it. You can take TV on the go with you. You can look at it wherever you are, on your computer, in your home, on the go, on your cell phone. Go to bit.ly/GoTurvey to learn how you can save money there. Until next time, my guest and I, Bola, are signing off. May everything you touch turn to gold. Be blessed and highly favored in everything that you do. Take care. We'll talk with you soon. Thanks, Bola. Bye-bye.
Bye.